What qualifications should my therapist have? Can I just go to my family doctor? Is it okay if my therapist knows my parents? Is it okay for my therapist to talk to me over lunch? I kind of feel judged by my therapist. Is that fine? Let's talk about it. Hi everyone, my name is Kanjal Bhansali and I am a counseling psychologist and the founder of Naya Mental Health, and this is the Indian Psyche, where we talk about all things mental health, psychology and therapy but in the Indian context. In India, mental health is a relatively unorganized industry, and one of the cons that comes out of it is literal cons. So, today I'm going to talk about 5 things that you need to look for in your therapist before you make them your therapist. So, number one is, of course, qualifications. You need to make sure that your therapist has the degree or diploma it requires for them to be a therapist. In India, to practice as a therapist, you need to have a minimum of a master's degree in psychology. So, either counseling psychology, clinical psychology, applied psychology, or related fields. If they have a master's degree in, for example, industrial psychology or forensic psychology, they are still not eligible to practice therapy for the lay people. So that's the minimum. And then if a therapist says that they are a clinical psychologist, they need to have, along with their master's, an MPhil or a PhD along with an RCI license to practice. So remember that at the very least, your therapist needs to have a master's degree in psychology. So this directly eliminates anybody who's calling themselves a life coach, no matter how many years of life experience they have, or even general practitioners or doctors, as we call them, even if they're the best doctor in town. You need to have studied psychology and the human mind in detail to be a psychologist. Didn't think I would need to say that. The next thing to check for is your therapist's specialization. It doesn't matter if they don't have an additional degree or a diploma or a certification in that specialization. It just suffices to see whether they have the relevant expertise or experience in dealing with your kind of issues. Although, if you want to avoid all of this hassle, you're in the exact right place, because at Naya Mental Health, we help you find the right therapist with the perfect specializations for your needs. So feel free to DM us. So most psychologists do have a niche or a particular type of clientele that they specialize in working with. And a quick look at their website or their social media profile will tell you that. You can also be on the lookout for additional tags. So, for example, if you are someone who has sustained trauma, it might help to check if the therapist is trauma informed so that you are more comfortable with them. The next thing that you may want to check is the logistical convenience of seeing a therapist. Although this might seem pretty basic and simple, a reason why a lot of clients drop out of therapy prematurely is because it is not logistically convenient for them. So, this includes the mode of therapy, whether it's online or offline, the location of their clinic, the fees, their availability, and so on. So, for example, if you're someone who can only go for therapy on weekends, but your therapist does not see clients on weekends, that's obviously not going to work out. If the therapist does not know or is not fluent in the language that you're fluent in, of course, that's not going to work out. Another very important consideration is the therapist's fees. So, if their fees are way out of your budget, you might not be able to see them for a very long time, which will be counterproductive to your growth. So, the next very important consideration is the ethics and the professionalism of the therapist. Like I said, because in India, mental health is not a very organized industry, there is no board that essentially penalizes therapists for being unprofessional or breaching ethics. And because the nature of therapy is so transparent and open, sometimes it's very easy for both clients and therapists to breach that boundary. So, like any other profession, make sure that you don't call your therapist at any time of the night, or if the therapist is tagging you in reels and memes, that's probably not okay. Or if they end up telling you about another client of theirs in whatever context, that's not okay either. Also, therapy sessions are not supposed to be advice giving or educational sessions. So if the therapist is removing their textbook for you to read from, that's not okay at all. So at the very basic level, if you're feeling unheard, disrespected, or misunderstood in therapy, that's probably not the right therapist for you. This brings me to my next point, which is your rapport with your therapist. It's really important for you to have a good rapport with your therapist. Imagine your vibe with your best friend. Doesn't it make it super easy to trust them and to share every intimate detail of your life with them? Now imagine talking about the same things to a distant, cold relative. It's difficult, isn't it? Of course, rapport is not something that you'll be able to ascertain within the first session itself, but you can always get an idea early on. It is completely okay to joke around with your therapist, to say the silliest of things, to say probably politically incorrect things, to even not articulate yourself very well. If your therapist makes you feel judged, then that might not be the right therapist for you. In therapy, all you're going to do is share intimate and critical details about your life with somebody else. So don't feel like you can compromise on your rapport and trust and connection with the therapist. So there you go. Here are the 5 things that you need to look for in your therapist before you make them your therapist. Number one is their qualification, so a minimum of a master's degree. Second is their specialization, which you'll most likely find on their website. Third is the logistics, so whether it's going to be convenient and comfortable for you to see them as a therapist. Fourth is the professionalism and the ethics. Make sure that they make you feel heard, understood, and respected. And finally, your rapport with the therapist, which is, of course, really, really important. That's all for this video. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, and comment, and we'll see you next time.